December 18th, 1944, near Stalag, Belgium. Private First Class James Flippen of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion lies in a ditch, hands behind his head, surrounded by Waffen-SS soldiers. His unit was overrun during the German offensive in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. He's now a prisoner of war. An SS officer approaches, speaking rapid German to his subordinates. They're discussing what to do with captured American soldiers. Some want to execute them immediately. The Malmedy massacre happened yesterday, where SS troops murdered 84 American prisoners. Flippen knows the risk. The officer looks at Flippen and switches to broken English. "You, American Negro, you come." Flippen nods slowly, maintaining a carefully constructed expression. Confused, frightened, compliant. He doesn't speak. He doesn't reveal that he understands every word the Germans are saying to each other. Private Flippen grew up in Milwaukee in a German-speaking neighborhood. His grandmother emigrated from Germany. He speaks fluent German, a fact not recorded in his military records, never mentioned to his captors. For the next 3 weeks, Flippen will be a model prisoner, quiet, cooperative, apparently ignorant. While German guards talk freely around him, discussing camp security, guard rotations, and weak points in the perimeter, Flippen listens and plans. The Germans assume, as Nazi racial ideology teaches, that black American soldiers are uneducated and primitive. They would never suspect one speaks their language fluently. This assumption becomes Flippen's advantage. On January 8, 1945, Flippen walks out of Stalag 9B during a guard shift change he learned about by overhearing German conversations. He evades patrols using Guards discussed in his presence. He reaches American lines 4 days later, carrying intelligence about German POW camps, troop movements, and defensive positions. Information gathered simply by listening while pretending not to understand. This is the story of the black soldier who outsmarted his captors by letting them underestimate him, then using their prejudice as a weapon. If you want military history about soldiers who used intelligence and deception to survive and resist, subscribe right now. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. Stories like this remained classified for decades because they contradicted narratives about POW experiences. The 333rd Field Artillery Battalion is one of 2 black field artillery battalions in the European theater. Activated in 1942, the 333rd trains at Camp Gruber, Oklahoma, before deploying to Europe in October 1944. The battalion operates 155mm howitzers, heavy artillery providing fire support for frontline infantry. Their crews are black enlisted men. Officers are predominantly white. In December 1944, the 333rd supports 8th Corps in the Ardennes sector of Belgium. This is considered a quiet sector. Veteran divisions rest here between major operations, and new divisions gain experience before frontline deployment. The Germans haven't launched major offensives in the Ardennes for years. On December 16, 1944, Germany launches its largest offensive of the war in the West. Operation Wacht am Rhein, known to Americans as the Battle of the Bulge, commits 3 German armies to a surprise attack through the Ardennes. The objective: split Allied forces, capture Antwerp, force a negotiated peace in the West. The 333rd Field Artillery Battalion is directly in the path of the German advance. Their positions near Schönberg support the 106th Infantry Division, a green unit that arrived in Belgium just days before the offensive begins. On December 17th, German forces overrun 106th Division positions. 2 entire regiments are cut off and surrender, the largest American capitulation in the European theater. The 333rd, supporting these regiments, finds itself surrounded. Battery C, commanded by Captain John Runyon, faces Kampfgruppe Piper, a Waffen-SS unit, spearheading the German advance. Piper's forces include Panther and Tiger tanks, mechanized infantry, and combat engineers. They're moving fast, exploiting breakthrough, heading toward the Meuse River. The 333rd's howitzers engage German armor at point-blank range, firing directly at tanks less than 500 yards away. This isn't normal artillery employment. Howitzers are designed for indirect fire at distant targets, not anti-tank combat. But surrounded by German armor, the battalion does what it must. Private Flippen serves in Battery C as an ammunition handler. His job, move 95-pound shells from the ammunition truck to the gun, prepare fuses, help load the breech. It's exhausting physical work requiring strength and speed. During the engagement on December 17th, Flippen's gun crew destroys multiple German vehicles before their position is overrun. German tanks approach from three sides, infantry dismounts and advances. The battery commander orders ceasefire and surrender. Approximately 60 soldiers from Battery C are captured, including Flippen. The Germans separate officers from enlisted men. Standard POW procedure. White officers are sent to officer camps. Black enlisted men face uncertain fate. Flippen and other captured black soldiers are held temporarily in a barn, while German commanders decide their disposition. SS troops guard them. The guards talk among themselves, not bothering to speak quietly. Why would they? These American prisoners don't speak German. Except Flippen does. He hears guards discussing orders to transport prisoners to collection points. He hears concerns about Allied airstrikes on roads. He hears a guard mention the Malmedy massacre, the execution of American prisoners the previous day, and another guard's response that more might be necessary. Flippen says nothing. He maintains the expression he's cultivated, passive, uncomprehending, waiting for instructions, but he's gathering intelligence and realizing the danger. Nazi racial ideology provides Flippen with protective cover. German soldiers in 1944 have been conditioned by years of propaganda depicting black people as intellectually inferior, primitive, incapable of complex thought. This prejudice extends to assumptions about education and language. German guards assume captured black American soldiers are uneducated and speak only basic English. The possibility that one might speak fluent German doesn't occur to them. Why would a primitive soldier learn a complex European language? This assumption allows Flippen to overhear conversations German soldiers would never conduct in front of prisoners they suspected understood them. After 2 days in temporary holding, Flippen and other prisoners are loaded onto trucks for transport to a permanent POW camp. During the journey, guards discuss routes, timetables, and security concerns in German. Flippen memorizes details, which roads have been bombed, where American forces are positioned, what German units are moving through the area. The prisoners arrive at Stalag 9B near Bad Orb, Germany, a camp holding thousands of American and British prisoners. Flippen is processed through intake, photographed, issued a prisoner number, given threadbare clothing and wooden shoes. Camp conditions are harsh. Food is minimal: watery soup, black bread, occasional potato. Barracks are overcrowded and unheated. Disease spreads through the camp. Prisoners weaken quickly from malnutrition. The Geneva Conventions require POW camps to provide adequate food, shelter, and medical care. Stalag 9B violates these standards systematically. German guards cite Allied bombing of supply lines as justification for short rations. Prisoners suspect the real reason is deliberate starvation. Flippen faces additional risk. The Germans segregate prisoners by race in some camps, placing black American soldiers in separate barracks under harsher conditions. At Stalag 9B, this segregation is informal, rather than absolute. But black prisoners receive worse treatment, smaller rations, harder labor details, more frequent beatings. Through all this, Flippen maintains his performance. He appears simple, compliant, unthreatening. When guards bark orders in German, he waits for translation or follows other prisoners' lead. He never reveals comprehension. This is the story of a soldier who turned his captor's racism into a tactical advantage, learning everything while revealing nothing. If you want military history about intelligence and survival under extreme conditions, subscribe right now. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. Flippen's story shows how prejudice blinds people to threats. Meanwhile, Flippen listens. He hears guards complaining about working conditions, which guards are lazy, which shifts are understaffed, when supervision is minimal. He learns the camp's daily routine, when roll calls occur, when food arrives, when guards change shifts. He identifies which guards are Wehrmacht veterans tired of the war and which are fanatical SS troops still committed to fighting. He learns which guards can be bribed with cigarettes or chocolate from Red Cross packages and which are incorruptible. Most importantly, he hears guards discussing security weaknesses. A section of perimeter fence needs repair, but materials are unavailable. A guard tower's searchlight malfunctions at night. The guard contingent is understaffed. Older men and teenagers replacing experienced soldiers sent to frontline units. Flippen shares none of this with other prisoners initially. He doesn't know who might talk under interrogation or who might inadvertently reveal his German fluency. He works alone, planning, waiting for opportunity. While maintaining his performance as an ignorant prisoner, Flippen systematically gathers intelligence about camp operations and German military movements. The Germans use POW labor for various tasks: clearing snow, moving supplies, repairing roads. These work details take prisoners outside the main camp under guard supervision. Guards talk during these assignments, discussing troop movements, supply problems, and battlefield developments. Flippen volunteers for work details frequently. Other prisoners think he's trying to earn extra food, a common motivation. Actually, he's gathering information. On one detail clearing snow from a rail siding, Flippen hears guards discussing train schedules. Ammunition trains run east toward the front lines on Tuesdays and Fridays. Hospital trains return west on Wednesdays carrying wounded. Security is lighter on westbound trains. On another detail moving coal, guards complain about recent Allied air raids. They mention specific targets. A fuel depot near Frankfurt was destroyed. A bridge over the main river was damaged. This information tells Flippen about Allied bombing campaigns and German infrastructure vulnerabilities. Working near the camp administrative building, Flippen overhears officers discussing prisoner exchanges. The Germans want to trade some American POWs for German prisoners held by the Soviets. Negotiations are ongoing but complicated. This suggests diplomatic channels remain open despite the war's intensity. Each piece of information means little by itself. Combined, they create an intelligence picture. German supply lines are strained. Air defenses are weakening. Transportation networks are vulnerable. Troop quality is declining. Flippen also learns personal information about guards. One guard's wife was killed in an Allied bombing raid. He hates Americans and beats prisoners for minor infractions. Another guard has a son missing on the Eastern Front. He's psychologically broken, going through motions without caring. A third guard is a committed Nazi who volunteered for camp duty to avoid frontline service. He's cruel but cowardly. Understanding individual guards helps Flippen predict behavior and identify opportunities. The Nazi volunteer works night shifts but arrives late and leaves early. The grieving father is assigned to gate duty but often forgets to check work parties returning from details. The war-weary Wehrmacht veteran can be bribed with cigarettes to ignore minor infractions. By January 1945, after 3 weeks as a POW, Flippen has comprehensive understanding of camp operations, guard patterns, and security weaknesses. He's ready to plan an escape. The challenge: escaping isn't enough. He needs to reach Allied lines 50-plus miles away through German-controlled territory in winter. He needs civilian clothes to avoid being shot as an escaping POW. He needs food for several days' travel. He needs to avoid German patrols, checkpoints, and informants. And he needs all this while maintaining his performance as a simple, ignorant prisoner. Until the moment he runs. January 8, 1945. Flippen executes his plan. He's identified the optimal conditions. Monday night, between 10 p.m. and midnight. The lazy Nazi volunteer guard works this shift. The searchlight on the North Tower is malfunctioning. A work detail returned late that afternoon, and the gate guard, the war-weary father, forgot to conduct thorough count. Flippen has acquired items through careful trading with other prisoners. A torn civilian coat from a British POW who received it from the Red Cross, dark pants that could pass for civilian wear, a knit cap. Not a perfect disguise, but enough to avoid immediate identification as a POW at a distance. He's saved food from rations over several days: hard bread, a few potatoes, a piece of sausage from a Red Cross package. Enough for 3 days if he's careful. At 10:30 p.m. during guard shift change, Flippen moves to the north fence section. The malfunctioning searchlight creates a dark zone. He's timed guard patrols. A 7-minute gap exists when guards are at opposite ends of their routes. He waits in shadows near a barrack, watching. The guards pass. He counts to 30, then moves quickly to the fence. The wire is old, poorly maintained. He finds the weak section he identified weeks ago: loose posts, corroded wire. He works the wire apart with his hands, ignoring cuts from barbed edges. He's through in 90 seconds. He lies flat in snow outside the fence, listening. No alarm, no shouts, no searchlight beam. He's clear of the immediate perimeter. Flippen moves away from camp, using terrain for concealment. He's wearing the civilian clothing over his POW uniform. If stopped, he'll claim to be a foreign laborer. If that fails, the uniform underneath proves he's a legitimate POW, protected by Geneva Conventions. If he wore civilian clothes exclusively, Germans could execute him as a spy. He travels west by night, hiding during day. Navigation is by stars and memory of maps he saw during training. He knows the general direction, west toward Allied lines, now somewhere beyond the Rhine after recent advances. The journey takes 4 days. He avoids roads where German patrols operate. He stays away from towns where civilians might report suspicious foreigners. He eats his saved rations carefully, supplementing with snow for water. He encounters German military traffic, trucks moving supplies, infantry marching to positions, ambulances carrying wounded. Each encounter requires careful evasion. His civilian clothes help. No one looks closely at a lone figure trudging through snow-covered fields. On the 3rd night, he hears artillery, American guns firing east. He adjusts course toward the sound. By the 4th day, he's close enough to see muzzle flashes. The final approach is most dangerous. He must cross the front line without being shot by either side. He waits until darkness, then moves toward American positions slowly, hands raised, calling out in English, "American soldier, don't shoot! American coming in!" Machine gun positions challenge him. He identifies himself: name, rank, unit, serial number. He describes being captured at the Bulge. The soldiers are skeptical. German infiltrators used similar ruses during the offensive. They hold him at gunpoint while officers verify his identity. It takes 6 hours to confirm Flippen's status through Army records. Finally, an intelligence officer recognizes his unit designation and confirms the 333rd was overrun at Schönberg. Flippen is who he claims to be, and he has information. Once American intelligence officers confirm Flippen's identity, they debrief him thoroughly. Flippen provides detailed information about Stalag 9B: location, prisoner population, guard strength, conditions, security measures. This intelligence helps plan for camp liberation as Allied forces advance deeper into Germany. More valuable is information he gathered about German military movements and infrastructure. Flippen describes train schedules, supply routes, troop morale, equipment shortages, details he overheard from guards discussing logistics problems. He identifies specific units he heard mentioned: SS divisions redeploying from the Western Front to defend against Soviet advances in the East, Volkssturm militia units being formed from old men and teenagers, Luftwaffe ground crews being converted to infantry due to fuel shortages grounding most aircraft. Intelligence officers are impressed. Most escaped POWs provide minimal tactical intelligence. They were imprisoned, isolated from military operations, unable to gather useful information. Flippen spent 3 weeks systematically collecting data while his captors assumed he understood nothing. The intelligence officer conducting the debriefing asks Flippen how he acquired this information. Flippen explains. He speaks fluent German, a fact never recorded in his military file. He maintained the pretense of ignorance while guards spoke freely around him. The officer's response is telling. He asks why Flippen never mentioned German fluency during training or deployment. Flippen's answer, "Nobody asked." and I figured it might be useful someday if nobody knew. This practical deception, keeping a useful skill secret until it provides advantage, demonstrates tactical thinking the Army didn't expect from a black enlisted soldier in 1944. The institutional assumption was that black soldiers were simple, unsophisticated, incapable of complex deception operations. Flippen's escape and intelligence gathering contradict that assumption. He executed a sophisticated operation requiring patience, observation, planning, and calculated risk-taking, all while under extreme stress in a POW camp. The Army intelligence officer writes a report recommending Flippen for commendation and suggesting his case demonstrates the value of language skills among enlisted personnel. The report notes that German-speaking soldiers, regardless of race, should be identified during training and potentially used for intelligence gathering if captured. Flippen receives the Bronze Star for his escape and intelligence gathering. The citation is deliberately vague. It mentions extraordinary resourcefulness and valuable intelligence, without specifying how he acquired information. The Army doesn't want to publicize that an escaped POW spoke German, as this might put other prisoners with language skills at risk if Germans become suspicious. Flippen returns to duty in February 1945. The 333rd Field Artillery Battalion has been reconstituted after its losses at the Bulge. Flippen rejoins his unit and serves through the end of the war in Europe. After Germany surrenders in May 1945, Flippen participates in occupation duties. He occasionally interacts with German civilians, maintaining the fiction that he doesn't speak German when useful, but revealing his fluency when necessary to prevent being deceived or cheated. He musters out of the Army in 1946 and returns to Milwaukee. He doesn't discuss his POW experience or escape publicly. Like many veterans, he finds civilian life more interested in forgetting the war than hearing detailed stories from those who fought it. In 1983, a military historian researching POW escapes discovers Flippen's case in Army records. The historian contacts Flippen, now 61, and conducts interviews. Flippen's story finally becomes public, 38 years after the events. The historian's research reveals something Flippen didn't know. He was one of very few American POWs who successfully escaped from German camps in the West and reached Allied lines. Most escape attempts failed. Those who succeeded usually had help from resistance networks or got lucky with circumstances. Flippen succeeded through careful planning based on intelligence gathered systematically over 3 weeks. Intelligence only available because guards assumed he couldn't understand them. His story demonstrates how prejudice creates exploitable vulnerabilities. The Germans' racist assumptions about black soldiers' capabilities blinded them to an obvious security risk. A prisoner who speaks your language will overhear everything you say. Flippen turned that blindness into a weapon. He let his captors underestimate him, then used their own words against them to escape and rejoin the fight.